Hello and welcome back to the channel. We're basically doing a simple history video again. It's the stories behind the most iconic photos in history. So basically, the history behind history. That's a weird sentence to say.
Behind famous.
So yeah, let's get on with the video.
Historical photos. A picture is worth 1,000 words, but some photographs have become...
That's the Hindenburg. Actually, that's a very famous picture. I don't think they really need to explain that.
even more iconic, standing the test of time, becoming renowned even decades later.
I don't know
Here's
that
the
picture.
history behind some of history's most famous photographs. The Hindenburg disaster.
Oh, right, so you're going to describe what happened to the Hindenburg. Oh, okay, I guess that makes sense.
In the 1930s, one of the most stylish ways to cross the Atlantic Ocean was in lighter-than-air Zeppelins, an elegant alternative.
Well, yeah, planes were rudimentary at the time. They were very bad and were very unreliable.
To transatlantic ship travel. One of the largest and most famous of these craft was the Hindenburg, operated by the German Zeppelin Airline Company. The airship had already completed multiple transatlantic...
This video is was taken when Hitler was in power. You can see because it has a swastika on it. Now, originally swastikas were seen of peace when they were like that. That is a sign of peace. Now, what Hitler did, he actually changed it to, to that, and skewed it very slightly. So yeah. Dang it.
voyages the year before the disaster, including extended journeys to Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. On May 3rd, 1937, the Hindenburg departed from Frankfurt, Germany.
I thought it was 1936. No, I'm probably just getting my dates wrong.
Its destination being the Naval Air Station Lakehurst, located in Manchester Township, New Jersey, just outside of New York City. The journey...
Actually, the Empire State Building, it has a pole on the top of it, and that was to basically keep your airship from floating away when you went to the US.
Across the Atlantic was uneventful, though the course was rerouted in order to avoid heavy thunderstorms. On May 6, 1937, the Hindenburg approached the docking station at Lakehurst, delayed several hours due to the weather conditions. At 7 p.m. local time, the airship approached the docking platform.
So actually, the Hindenburg was actually one of the largest airships of the time, and hold a world record at one point for being the largest, which I'm not surprised because it was massive.
Max Pruss was forced to make a series of sharp turns to keep the nose of the craft aligned with the tower. Mooring lines were dropped and the Hindenburg was being lowered to the station, ready to unload its passengers. What happened next is a mystery, even to this day.
Yes, and no one actually knows, and we probably will never know how it actually happened. So we've only got to guess on evidence and things that happened before.
7:25 p.m. a fire broke out somewhere on the craft. Most eyewitnesses claim it started near the stern, although accounts do vary. The gigantic airship, filled with highly flammable hydrogen, erupted in flames.
It would have been better if they used helium, because helium doesn't explode.
The Hindenburg dipped towards the ground as the flames spread over it, and soon the Zeppelin crashed to the earth less than a minute after the initial fire. Of the 97 people on board the ship, 35 were killed, along with another victim on...
Actually, this used to happen a lot. Not like this, but as in, like, they going up in flames, because of the hydrogen which was used to keep it afloat. And this is why, actually a lot of people didn't want to go on them, because there was a chance of them exploding.
The ground. In addition to the iconic image, there's newsreel footage of the event, with reporter Herbert Morrison's famous exclamation of, "Oh, the humanity," cementing the Hindenburg as one of the most famous transport.
Yeah, so I actually have watched that news report, and it is it's shocking.
Transportation disasters in history. There are many theories as to what happened that day, ranging from lightning strikes to sabotage to static electricity. What is clear, however, is the image and the accompanying newsreel footage. It almost instantly dampened the public's enthusiasm for airship travel, and the stylish method for crossing the Atlantic soon lost favor, replaced by airplane transit.
In war, the size of your army matters, and sometimes getting paid. Morgan may endure. The teen Binagan can fight to lead you to victory.
Eventually reaching the small island.
Yes. This is a very iconic one because it showed a US victory. Now it's I think this is 1944.
By February of 1945, the war.
1945. And the US was getting quite close to the Japanese mainland and trying to take the islands around it. And whenever they did, they would actually raise a flag on these islands. And that's what that picture was about.
The Pacific had been raging for 3 years. Over that time, American forces steadily tightened the noose around the Japanese Empire, eventually reaching the small island. Located 650 miles from Tokyo, Iwo Jima possessed 3 airstrips which were vital for American strategic bombing campaigns.
Yes, because if they could get the airstrips, and they could more easily target Japan, meaning that they could more easily whittle Japan down much quicker and to much more effect there, and they would be much closer to the Japanese mainland, meaning the Japanese would be more likely to surrender. But then this is Japan, they probably would probably have not surrendered if it wasn't for the nuclear bombs which were dropped.
Against Japan. After over 2 months of aerial bombing and naval bombardment, elements of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th Marine Infantry Divisions stormed the tiny island on February 19th, many expecting a quick victory. Instead, the Japanese defenders, operating out of a complex network of tunnels, fought back fiercely, inflicting heavy losses on the advancing Marines. The fighting was expected to last less than 2 weeks, but went on for over a month.
And it was actually one of the bloodiest and one of the hardest battles to that point ever in war up to that point in the war, or any war, depending on what you class as a single battle. And the Japanese fought so ferociously that actually that it was the single bloodiest moment for the US in that war.
Battles of the Pacific. Went on for over a month, one of the bloodiest battles of the Pacific Theater. On February 23rd, Marines reached the summit of Mount Suribachi, the highest point on the island, an occasion marked by the raising of a small American flag. A short time later, orders were given to replace the first flag with a larger and therefore more visible stars and stripes.
Yes.
While preparations were being made, Associated Press photographer Joe Rosenthal climbed Mount Suribachi, hoping to capture the event. Once in place, Rosenthal was temporarily distracted setting up his camera. Standing next to him was a Marine motion picture photographer who exclaimed, "Hey, there she goes." On instinct, Rosenthal pointed his camera and shot the famous photo. 6 men raising...
And honestly, it's a beautiful photo. The quality's brilliant. And it just shows the struggle that they were experiencing.
Stars and stripes atop the mountain as the smaller flag was taken down. Once published, the image would be used to bolster the war-weary American public, a centerpiece fixture in war bond drives and propaganda-boosting measures. In spite of the triumphant tone of the image, the battle for Iwo Jima was far from over, raging on until March 26th, far longer than initially expected. In the aftermath of the photo's publication, there have been accusations that it was staged. Confusing things was Rosenthal's response when questioned about the validity of the image. He answered an emphatic yes to the questions of the staged nature of the photograph, believing the question referred to another taken that day titled Gung Ho,
Yes.
depicting Marines holding their helmets and weapons aloft in triumph. Though there is still some controversy, Rosenthal's iconic image matches almost identically to the newsreel footage shot by the Marine standing shoulder to shoulder with him. Staged or not, the flag raising on Iwo Jima is still one of the most famous and powerful images of war ever captured.
But most people these days, including historians, don't think it was staged just because of the Marine photographer next to him taking a very similar newsreel.
Viet Cong execution.
Yes.
The 1968 Tet Offensive came as a shock to South Vietnamese and American forces as hundreds of installations were simultaneously attacked by Viet Cong and NVA contingents, their aim to unbalance their more powerful opponents. During the course of the offensive, some of the heaviest fighting would take place in the South Vietnamese capital of Saigon, where images of the fighting would be broadcast into the homes of everyday Americans.
Which actually was some of the first times that they were directly broadcasted live to the US, because they just hadn't been in a war of this scale since World War II, where televisions were cut off quite easily.
Further fueling the anti-war movement. One of the most famous photographs of the attack on Saigon was the execution of Nguyen Van Lem at the hands of General Nguyen Ngoc Loan, captured by Associated Press photographer Eddie Adams. The casual brutality of a summary execution of an unarmed man shocked Americans, adding fuel to the ever-growing anti-war movement.
Yes.
Many were appalled that Americans were fighting and even dying.
So actually, a lot of US people at this time thought that it wasn't the place for US soldiers, and that war was a brutal, unforgiving force that should be ended forever. And actually, the protests of the 60s and early 70s about it are very famous and well documented.
To uphold a regime that acted with such callous disregard for human life, even if enemies. Though the Tet Offensive was a military disaster, it was a resounding political victory for the communist forces. Pictures like the execution were pivotal in turning American support away from the war effort and demanding American troops return home. There is still, however, more to the story than meets the eye. Nguyen Van Lem was a member of a so-called VC Revenge Squad, whose task was to infiltrate Saigon and assassinate prominent members of the South Vietnamese police force or their families if the officers couldn't be found. While fighting continued throughout the city, Lem was captured by South Vietnamese soldiers at a mass grave, including police officer Nguyen Tuan and 6 members of his family. Lem was brought to Loan, who drew his revolver. Adams raised his camera, expecting to record the general interrogating the prisoner. Instead, as Adams clicked the shutter, Loan fired, the camera capturing the instant the bullet struck Lem's head. After the war, Loan would move to the United States, where his infamy would haunt him for the rest of his life, being ostracized wherever he tried to settle down. Adams expressed regret for the impact of his photograph, stating, "2 people died in that photograph, the recipient of the bullet and General Nguyen Ngoc Loan. The general killed the Viet Cong. I killed the general with my camera. Still, photographs are the most powerful weapons in the world. People believe them, but photographs do lie, even without manipulation. They are only half-true.
They only show that exact moment and not the entire story."
A single, well-timed photograph can convey a much more powerful impact than the footage of the event. Photographs give a portrait of the times in which they were taken, conveying the zeitgeist of the event and the emotions of those experiencing it without the need to utter a single word.
Three reasons why minimum.
Anyway, that's the end of the video. So remember to like and subscribe to Simple History. And I'll see you in the next video.